The Way of Water. It's not just the new Avatar movie, but it is essential for everything living on our planet. Now, our bodies are 60% water, and a new large study has shown that hydration can have a direct impact on how we age and how healthy we are as we age. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, it's Dr. David. Hoping you all are enjoying your first month of 2023. Wanted to give a little shout out to everybody. Join us on our social media platforms if you haven't already, for getting content such as this, and please join us on our Patreon as well if you wish to be a supporter. Now, Avatar, which the first one that I had seen back in 2009, when it was an immersive 3D movie, and it was something that completely just changed my life and the way that I view going to movies. Now, overall, I'm not one who goes to a lot of 3D movies, but there was this immersive experience feeling like we were on Pandora. And I had to keep on going back. I actually saw it 3 different times in the theater, and then went out and got a 3D television and a DVD player with the 3D Avatar disc just so I can watch it at home. Now we fast forward to the end of 22 into now, The Way of Water. Now, if you have not had an opportunity to see this movie in like a 3D large screen IMAX Dolby type of situation, do yourselves a favor and do it again. It's this amazing immersive experience, something that really I haven't really gotten anymore. And the moment that we went underwater, for as far as like when the scenery went underwater, I just had this perma grin on my face, this wow factor that lasted for the remaining 2.5 hours of the movie. So do yourselves a favor if you have the opportunity and see it. But now, on a more serious note, we all know how important water is for our lives, okay? And it's something that I've been very mindful in terms of keeping with my water intake all along. Now, water has also been something that's been very personal to me in my life. Growing up in South Florida, on the South Florida beaches, being in the beach, being in the ocean all of the time. We had a pool growing up, we still do. And, being in the pool 300 days a year, the water has a very relaxing effect on my body, almost like a calming of the nerves, just like nothing else I can explain. In fact, the band that my sister and I formed a few years back, many years back actually, it was called Just Add Water. So this, of course, just tells a little bit more of my personal relationship with water. But of course, I imagine you do too, at least in some capacity, because everybody should be making sure that they are well hydrated. Now, in a new study in The Lancet, which is one of England's most prominent medical journals, this was published from the National Institute, the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute in America is where they actually did this research. And they were looking at the impact of hydration status on long term health. They collected data for over 25 years, enrolling patients between the ages of 45 and 66, and they collected data on over 11,000 people. And they were looking at a person's sodium level. So when we do a liver kidney profile, a BMP, a CMP, one of the markers we get is sodium. And typically the sodium normal levels are between about 135 and 146. And they were using this as a proxy of hydration status, because the lower the number, the better hydrated people typically are. There are certain medical conditions that's not so, and certain medicines that can affect that as well. But overall, it's kind of a nice proxy. So, what they found is some very interesting things, because they found that the lower the numbers, that there was much better outcomes in terms of lowering risk of chronic health issues and of aging. So what they found is that if you're not well hydrated, you actually age faster. And the interesting thing here is they weren't just looking at people who were above the upper end of that range, above the 146. They found that when they were comparing people at the upper part of the normal range, in that 145, 146 range, compared to people who are at the lower levels, that like 135, 136, there was a significant difference in terms of the development of these chronic conditions. In particular, even if people had levels of 144 or higher, it was associated with increased likelihood of developing heart failure, stroke, chronic lung disease, and dementia and diabetes, just from looking at your sodium levels. Now, this, of course, is what we call an association. This is not proof of cause of anything. We're not saying that high sodium is what the cause of it, but certainly the people who were better hydrated based upon this had better life outcomes. They even found that people who were in the highest end of the sodium range were 20% more likely to die early. So that's kind of important, you think. So, anyways, now we know that optimal health goes way beyond hydration. How well are we sleeping? Getting good exercise, good and physical activity, good nutrition, good mental health. But probably the easiest thing we could do that we can control is our fluid intake, is our water intake. Now, the CDC did put out a report, and they looked at people from between 2015 and 2018 as to what their actual water intake was, and they found that children and adolescents only averaged 23 ounces of water a day, and adults only averaged 44 ounces a day. Now, of course, there are other sources of hydration, such as other beverages. Of course, with them often come a lot of sugar content or artificial sweeteners, caffeine, etc. But of course, there's also food sources, especially fruits and vegetables that we get fluids from. So it's important to make sure that we are very well hydrated. Now, the amount of fluid that a person needs on a daily basis does depend on who that person is. Now, according to the Institute of Medicine, men need approximately 13 cups of water every day. Of fluid every day, I should say, should be as water. Women need 9 cups a day, but if you're pregnant, 10 cups. But for children, it's recommended that 1 cup of water per year of age. Okay, so right there, an 8-year-old, 64 ounces of water, 8 times 8. So that's really what the goal should be. Now, of course, if a person is an athlete, if they're outside, if they're doing strenuous activity, those are baseline numbers we should take in, and we should be taking more fluid into our body if we are, again, an outsider in strenuous activity. So we need to even monitor and push the numbers even higher under those situations. If you feel thirsty, you've wasted an opportunity to prehydrate. You should never get to the point where you feel thirsty, because that means you are dehydrated to a certain extent. Now, how can we measure? Okay, now we can do a blood test. We can do the sodium level that's on these types of these kidney profiles. And that's semi-basic. In fact, it's one of the most basic tests that doctors will do when they're assessing just overall metabolic health. But there are things that we can do on our own, such as, what does our urine look like? If your urine is like pure water, almost looking like no color whatsoever. Now, if you take B vitamins, since they're yellow, sometimes they can taint the color yellow that way. But a clear urine is one of the good ways of knowing that you're well hydrated. Now, of course, the best thing you could do is add up how much you or your family members are consuming on a daily basis. Keep like a 3-day log and really see. And if you're not hitting those target goals that I mentioned, then aim for it. See what you can do. Okay? So, anyways, here's a New Year's resolution for you. This is an easy one. I realize we're a little bit into January, but you can still do it. Try to hit these hydration levels. Okay? So, everybody, to your health. And have a great day.
If you like what you've been seeing, please hit the subscribe button.